10 seconds. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Toronto Police Headquarters. This morning, Staff Superintendent Joe Matthews of Detective Operations will be joined by Inspector Paul Krofchuk of the Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force and Detective Sergeant Brandon Price of the Homicide and Missing Persons Unit to update the public on a shooting incident that occurred on Monday, November 11th, 2024. Following Staff Superintendent Matthews' remarks, Detective Sergeant Price will update the public on a homicide that occurred this morning. They will then take questions. Thank you. Staff Matthews?
Good morning. Today we are showcasing the 16 firearms that were seized in connection with the shooting incident that occurred just a few nights ago in downtown Toronto. On November 11th at approximately 11:15 p.m., officers were in the area of Queen Street West and Dufferin Street in relation to a male wanted for a robbery. While the officers were conducting observations, they observed a white Honda drive into a parking lot of a nearby grocery store and park. The grocery store is located directly behind 1196 Queen Street West. 3 males exited the Honda, all armed with handguns, and discharged approximately 50 rounds towards the rear of 1196 Queen Street West. At the time, there were dozens of people at that location attending a birthday party. Shortly after the shooting started, numerous individuals exited the address and returned fire. The occupants of the Honda took cover behind a nearby police vehicle, which was in fact occupied by 2 police officers. Bullets pierced through the front, back, and sides of the vehicle, narrowly missing the officers and riddling cars and surrounding buildings. Nearby officers from PSRT and 52 Division quickly attended the location, ran towards the gunfire, and apprehended numerous individuals. As a result of their quick actions, 23 people were taken into custody and 16 firearms were seized. These weapons serve as a stark reminder of the real and present danger that illegal firearms pose to our community, to innocent citizens, and to officers who bravely respond to these incidents. What makes this situation even more alarming is the context in which these firearms were found. The individuals arrested were attending a birthday party at this location. Not only were they allegedly brazenly displaying these weapons on social media, but they also brought these firearms out into our streets and engaged in reckless exchange of gunfire. It happened in a busy part of our city where countless lives were at risk. It is a miracle that no one was injured or killed. Another deeply concerning aspect of the incident is the age of those involved. These individuals taken into custody range in age from 16 to 30 years old. Among them was a 16-year-old male who, during the investigation, was determined to be one of the suspects wanted in a homicide. While I can't name the person under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, I can tell you that they have been charged with second-degree murder for the homicide of a 30-year-old Matthew Burgart on April 25, 2024. As you may recall, Matthew was in a residential unit in the Long Branch and Lakeshore Boulevard West area when suspects entered and made demands for personal valuables. Matthew was present during this home invasion and was shot and killed. It should alarm all of us that the young people we took into custody are already heavily involved in serious activity and armed with high-powered firearms. All of the firearms originated from the United States. This highlights the ongoing challenge of cross-border gun trafficking and the urgent need for enhanced measures to prevent illegal firearms from entering our communities. Furthermore, it's important to note that 2 of the 8 individuals charged were out on bail, and the 16-year-old charged with murder was under a firearms prohibition. This speaks directly to the growing concern around our current bail system and underscores the urgent need for bail reform. When individuals who are already facing serious charges can so easily obtain firearms and continue engaging in violent criminal activity, it becomes clear that changes are needed to protect the safety of our communities. We all need to take a hard look at what's happening in our neighborhoods, the fact that young individuals are not only in possession of these weapons, but are using them in such a brazen manner should concern every member of our community. That's why we're asking for your help. If you know of anyone who is in possession of illegal firearms, please come forward. Share what you know with us so we can take these weapons off our streets before another incident like this occurs. Together, we can make our city safer. Thank you for your time, and thank you to all the officers who continue to serve and protect our city with unwavering dedication. I'll now pass it over to Detective Sergeant Price to speak about this morning's homicide.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this morning. I'm here to speak about Homicide 77 for 2024. Today at approximately 12:45 a.m., police received a call for a stabbing incident at the Fort York Boulevard and Dan Leckie Way area. Two men were involved in an argument inside of an apartment within that area. While I can't speak to what the argument was about, both men ultimately stabbed each other, and officers attended and located these two individuals inside of the apartment with life-threatening injuries. First aid was rendered by officers and paramedics. Both individuals were transported to local hospitals where they were tended to. Ultimately, one of those individuals passed away. The other individual remains in the hospital in critical condition. At this time, there are no outstanding suspects or any kind of ongoing public risk as a result of this incident that we have been able to identify. The two men were known to each other. We are currently working on identifying the deceased individual and notifying, and then once that's complete, we will then take steps to notify next of kin before we'll be publishing any further information. Thank you very much, and I'll now take some questions.
Any questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Gun seized, and the fact that this was from one event, one party, I mean, how concerning is this?
This is extremely concerning. In my time as a police officer, this type of event we really haven't seen in the city of Toronto. It is something that we see in TV and movies, but it's not something that is actually played out on our streets. As far as the granular points of the investigation, I'll turn it over to Inspector Paul Krawchuk to take some of those questions.
Morning. Any questions? Did you want to, is that?
Can I ask about the 16-year-old arrested for murder or being charged with murder? Would that be directed to you?
If it's in regards to the murder charges, it'd be Detective Sergeant Price.
Okay, I mean, we can talk about this murder. I mean, the 16-year-old arrested related to the shootout on Queen Street, and how was he tied to this murder of this 30-year-old man back in April?
So there were three suspects that entered this residential unit at Long Branch in Lakeshore area. He was one of those three individuals, and so through the course of our investigation over the last number of months, we were able to identify and then begin to seek this individual, and we were fortuitous that he was caught up in this event so that he could be taken off of the streets.
Can you also talk to the age? I mean, it's not the first time we're hearing of a 15, 16-year-old being charged with murder. No,
absolutely not. Yeah, young people make really bad decisions sometimes, and this is a good example of that. I mean, I don't know what else I can say about it beyond that. Bad decisions is one thing, but bad decisions and then young people with firearms is a whole other thing. And this is a situation where there was a bad decision to do a break and enter, and that was compounded and turned into a murder with the guns that were possessed by those individuals that may not have otherwise, may have been a simple break and enter, unfortunate, shocking, terrible incident, but because of the presence of a firearm and the youth poor judgment, we see this kind of event take place and turn into something much, much more serious.
Inspector, can you talk about the catalyst to this? What do you believe led to this? There was mention of a birthday party, but I mean, do these groups know each other? What kicks this off?
So, you know, obviously, we're looking into, we believe it's gang-related, obviously, but there's the beginning of the investigation. What started this was simply officers looking for someone who had a monitoring bracelet on because they were on a court release. That's what started this whole thing, and officers were in the area because of that. And so happens that there was a birthday party happening at the same time.
Where do you think this goes if the officers are not at the area? If the officers aren't in that situation and this unfolds, how does this end differently?
So how this ends differently is it's obviously we wouldn't be on scene right away. So we'd see probably less arrests, less guns seized. So I'd love to say this is an isolated incident, but the reality is guns are coming over the border in so high numbers, and they're so easy to get that we're seeing this many guns in the streets. This is one area of the city, right? And compound that throughout the whole city. This is just a small sample of what's out there. And so that's the concern. And they're getting into, like the detective sergeant said, they're getting in the hands of very young people. And when they're in the hands of young people who are inexperienced, immature, and make bad decisions, results like this happen.
They've been shown off. Have these been modified? They look like there's tape on them. They're all camo style. I mean,
so they're actually, the original color is not green. It's through some of the processes we put the guns through as a result of being in our custody.
I have a question. So what are some further actions that the police will take to prevent this kind of serious gun trafficking and this kind of violence?
Yeah, so there's, first of all, the whole service as a whole takes on gun violence as a serious crime. So at the divisional level, we're often having officers out with directed patrols in areas that we are concerned about gun violence. We have intelligence services who provide officers on the front lines with information, the latest information about gang activity. You know, we have the Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force, whose sole job is to not only respond to shootings, but also to be proactive and go after these members that have guns. So there's a lot happening across the city in relation to this. The difficulty, of course, is the numbers that we're seeing. Back when I first started, you know, if someone made an arrest on a shift and got a gun, it was a rarity. Now it's unfortunately more of a common thing.
Yeah, sorry, why we have so many police officers working on this? Like the number of the guns shows like something is like completely wrong here. Like, what do you think that caused to like these so many guns trafficking illegally?
Well, unfortunately, there's obviously money to be made here, and obviously people who don't care what the result of them making money is, right? The end result is people bringing these guns over the border. The result is people dying on the streets of not only Toronto, but other cities across Ontario. The reality is it's money that moves this, right? And gang activity.
We've seen a video where there's a number of people inside a pretty enclosed space. Some of them have guns up in the air. There's something on the screen that says making way or making wave. Can you confirm that's part of the investigation and how that may have led to what happened?
That is definitely part of our investigation. At this time, you know, we're alleging that it was taken at the club, but we haven't confirmed that yet. My understanding, it was a birthday celebration that was taking place inside that club.
And you mentioned these guns came from the U.S., but how are they obtained?
So there's many different ways, right? They can be somebody who's bought them legally in the States and then has trafficked them in some fashion, or it could be somebody who has had their guns stolen at their house. There's lots of different ways they can make their way across the border. But part of our investigation involves tracing them, and the reason these guns are on the table before you is because they've already all been traced, and they all are coming back to the United States.
And just to clarify that video, one last thing. Is the presence of that video online what led the other group to that address?
We still have to get through the investigation to determine that for sure. I mean, that's a possibility, obviously, if it was posted publicly or even within a group of people that could have seen that. That is a possibility, but our investigation will have to tell that in the end.
the client's investigation that the officers were undertaking at the time, was that individual out on firearms-related charges?
That individual was, I out on firearm-related charges, correct.
Were they involved in the, or were they at the party or involved in the shootout in any way?
Yes, they were at the party. It's my understanding. We're alleging that.
And what gangs were involved in this, or do you believe?
You know, I'll be honest with you, I know the gangs that are involved. We know the gangs that are involved. I don't want to give them any opportunity here. There's no need to speak their names at this point. We know where they're coming from. We're taking the appropriate action in those neighborhoods, et cetera. But I don't want to give them any advertising whatsoever right now.
Providing the name of the person that the police were doing the compliance check on?
It's one of those arrested, yeah.
One of the, which one?
Montague.
And you are taking steps, if this is gang-related, to ensure that there's no escalation, there's nothing that comes out?
Yes, as happens in every shooting, same thing. And working with our city partners, part of the SafeTO program, that always comes into play in ensuring that we can suppress as much violence as possible in the, not only in the neighborhoods that have experienced the violence, but the ones that may have, you know, rival gangs and where there could be repercussions.
Okay, one more question? Good? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.